Hello, I'm Robert, helping people who are scared of various things, fact-checking and science blogger. And this time is to help any of you who are scared about North Korea. So, first of all, it's as I'm saying this right now, it's already towards in the evening in where is it? In Korea. And it was never very likely that they would do anything on Christmas Day because it's not a special day for them. Very few of them are Christian. It's not they're just some foreigners, and it's not part of their religion, not something they celebrate. And the big time for them is New Year's Day. And that's when Kim Jong-un is going to be giving his big speech of the year. So if there's anything, that's a far more likely time. And all that it's likely to be is the very worst it can be is just a missile fired high up above the atmosphere and then it falls into the sea, like this one that we had back in 2017 when they used a mock warhead probably, and they fired this far up into the sky, and from the height that it went to, then the US would be able to work out that they could hit the United States. But it would have only been a mock warhead, and it wasn't very much weight to it, and it probably also would have burnt up in re-entry. So they probably don't really have it's pretty certain they don't have the ability to actually hit the United States with a nuclear weapon at the moment. And that really is the main reason why the United States don't want them to do any more tests. If they already had the ability to hit the United States, then tests really are just firing things into the sea, and the nuclear armed nations do that all the time. And it would be no big deal just to fire mock missiles into the sea. But what the United States are worried about North Korea developing their technology a bit further and learning how the ICBMs do the re-entry and building more powerful engines and being able to send things all the distance to the United States and very heavy weapons. So that's the real reason why they wanted them to stop, and that is why Kim did stop, because he wanted to go into negotiations with the United States. He doesn't really want to irritate them, he really wants to do something about these awful sanctions. And North Korea, it's a very you can see this rather striking photograph from the satellite, and you can see how bright South Korea is at night. And often at night, not always, but often large parts of North Korea, all except the capital Pyongyang, are just completely dark because they can't run their power stations. They not getting the fuel imports. They have old infrastructure and stuff like that. And very few people in North Korea have cars. Most often it's like a bicycle if you're out in the countryside. And it's a third world country, although it's exactly the same people, and they just split in half during the Korean War, and these went one way and these went the other way. And there are many relatives between the two parts. There's no reason for North Korea to be different from South Korea, except a different history since the Korean War. And both South Korea and North Korea, they want to reunify eventually, as strange as it seems to us, with such different systems of government, probably under a democracy eventually. But that's not likely to happen anytime soon, but South Korea are very keen to invest a lot in helping North Korea to come forward to the South Korean level of technology. And North Korea are very keen on that too. And if you go back to the I've got a picture here, and that's President Moon, he's the that's a magnified thing. He is the president of South Korea, and he's been very instrumental in trying to get these people to get the summits underway. And so one recent positive development is here. This is South Korea, Japan and China in a trilateral summit in I think it was in Japan. Anyway, they are trying to get the dialogue back on course again, and China and Russia particularly, they don't want North Korea to have nuclear weapons, and they also, particularly China and North Korea, they don't want North Korea's economy to collapse. As you can see, it wouldn't be so difficult for that to happen. I go back to this page. With them, they're being such a poor country, they're very resilient though. They've been through so many sanctions in the past. Oh, where's that night thing gone? Yeah, I can't remember what it is. Anyway, you saw it earlier. So Russia and China also, they don't want North Korea to be destabilized to the point they start having refugees going into their countries. And it's really hitting the ordinary people in North Korea. It's not just the leaders. And actually, they actually care for the... it's a complete myth, really, the idea that the leaders in North Korea don't care for their people. It's not some tin pot dictator. It's rather different from how you imagine it. They, if I go back here, to have it up here. So, he's this is very symbolic for them, this going up in their white horses. You see, they're all very ceremonial, going up their high mountain. And this is connected with the idea of a symbolic leader in a Confucian society. And although he's very ruthless, according to the way we look at things, it's really that he feels everyone should be sort of towing the line of his Confucian perfect society. And when people step out of line, and so he's really trying to keep his country very controlled. But it's a Confucian society, and they also, from their point of view, they're very, the only people in North Korea, then he has to have a fair bit of support. And he does care for his people. They're actually less disadvantaged than other people with similar levels of GDP in least developed countries like North Korea. And they also, of course, put an awful lot into the military, but that is because they're really scared that the United States might invade them. So the military is just a deterrent. They have this policy of independence, and they are not expansionists. Their aim is to develop their own self-contained country in its own way, and not to be invaded by the United States or anyone else, and eventually to reunify with South Korea. And they very much want these crippling sanctions reduced. And I think that they are, yes, we have, it's down here somewhere. So what they're going to do is most likely they either do a missile test or they send a satellite into orbit, which would be less that would be less provocative. And they have these plans to send we need a very powerful engine to send a satellite right up to geostationary orbit. So they might do that as a way of showing how they're developing their engine technology. Or maybe we'll get some peaceful development from all this stuff that's going on. And as I say in this recent article, there have been lots of secret talks in the past, like when where we got it. There were secret talks in January in Sweden, and the Pompeo's secret trip to North Korea in 2018, and they tend to be revealed only after the event. So it's not impossible that the secret talks going on just now that we don't know about. And there's definitely North Korea. I'm certain myself that they are genuine about this. If I can find the like this. I talked about this before, but just briefly to mention to any of you who haven't seen my previous talks or videos or articles, that the way that they treated Trump during the first summit, especially, was completely unlike the way they've ever any president before. In fact, it was probably the first time that most North Koreans had seen a living president, a photograph of a living president of the United States, and they used the honorific to describe him on television, which means showing respect for the leader of another country, compared with what they used to do before, which was just leaflets and things, just poking fun at him and grotesque characterizations of the president. And There's been a really big change in relations, and they've stopped shouting slogans across the demilitarized zone and dropping leaflets and things, and they've got a hotline between North and South Korea. And this President Moon, he's been quite a key behind all this, in helping the summits to happen. And South Korea had a whole range of ways of supporting North Korea that they were ready to roll out if there had been an agreement and a deal in the last summit. And I think there's no doubt that they're both that there's a lot of genuineness there, that North Korea do want to do something about these crippling sanctions. China and Russia also want to do that, though they do not want the nuclear weapons at all. They don't like the nuclear weapons at all, neither China nor Russia like them. Not in the hands of North Korea. And so if somehow some progress can be made, then there's definitely a possibility of positive development soon. But the very worst case is that they just fire a test missile, up into the air, like they did several times in 2017. It just flies high above the atmosphere, and then it just comes back down into the sea. And back in 2000, this is not likely to happen, but just to mention this, the worst case, they had this idea back in 2017 of, and by the way, Japan and United States, they can shoot down ballistic missiles. The only thing is that they can't guarantee to shoot down all of them. Of course, North Korea are not very accurate. They're probably only accurate to within 6 miles for just flying over towards Guam, which would be the nearest place they could aim for. And but if the North Korea looks like it's targeting an area that's too close to somewhere whereas the United States, then they will, Japan and United States will coordinate and will try to hit it down. But then if at any point the missiles just flying over Japan, like they have done several times, they just let them go. And they're equipped with the best radar that ever put to sea. And so if the US has 2 interceptors fired at each North Korean threat, then there's a 96% chance of downing each individual missile. So that's the stage at which they are at. It's only a 4% chance of a missile if they were to fire a missile anywhere at anything. But there's no way that North Korea is going to fire a missile at anything and attack anyone. This is only if there's an accident and it misfires and it was to land somewhere it shouldn't. Then there's no way that they would fire a missile with a nuclear weapon on it on this occasion. They did talk about doing a test missile with a hydrogen bomb, which we would fire into the Pacific, but this was long ago, right at the very height of the anxieties. And even they probably don't have that ability, but they might, if there would be a way of proving they can miniaturize a hydrogen bomb if they have done that. But there have been many, so a lot of people are not very aware about how many hydrogen bombs have been exploded in the past. Loads and loads of them. And this is a video I've got of a hydrogen bomb that the British exploded in one of our atmospheric tests. And then a plane just flew up quite close, dropped a bomb out, and then flew away, and the bomb exploded while the plane was flying away. And hydrogen bombs are very, very destructive, but they're not. I think some people get a little bit over and don't quite realise they still have their limitations. They're nothing like as powerful as, say, a volcano or an earthquake. Even our biggest bombs are not a patch on a volcano in the amount of energies involved. And the radioactivity, although it's important, is very diluted. We have radioactive potassium in our bodies, and mildly radioactive. It doesn't harm us. Our bodies are used to us, and small amounts of radioactivity in the sea. So even back then, even if they had done that hydrogen bomb test, It wouldn't have been a big deal, not for humans. It would have been for a few fish in the bit of the sea that they hit, and that would be it. So I hope that helps a little bit as well. But there's no way they're going to be doing that this time. The worst case is that it's a missile test that they just fire up into the sky, so high up that the United States will look at that and say, they've developed a more powerful engine now, and that would be their reason for doing it, and they would be testing that new engine. That's the worst case, but I think it's unlikely myself. Although it is possible, and people are saying that it could happen, that's the worst case. And that would just be a missile test in order to try to get the United States back online again. And then the idea behind all that is saying, look what we've got. We've got this. We can put this on the table. Because before they just tried, they tried demolishing if I can find it, demolishing their this place, demolishing their launch pad. And and as a goodwill measure on their part, but they didn't get enough coming back from the United States part, so they might be thinking, we've got to actually show that they rebuilt it, and then fire a satellite, and then say, look, now we've got something very impressive, and we will offer to dismantle it for good this time if you will do some sanction relief on your side, just to get the whole process started again. So it might be that they're thinking something like that. Or that they're going to fire a missile and then say, look, we fired an ICBM and we've got a little bit further, and in progress towards being able to hit the United States, and we offer to demolish those facilities and stop firing ICBMs again in order to get progress with the summit again. And I mean, the way I understand it, this is still a golden opportunity for them, because they know that Trump will talk to them. They don't know if they don't know for sure if Trump is going to be re-elected. For most presidents, it would be pretty much a shoo-in to the second term. But for Trump, they know that it is in question whether he will be re-elected in 2020. And if another president is elected, then it's a big unknown for them. So they definitely want things to be moving now with President Trump. And so I personally don't think they're going to walk back from that too far. But they do want something done about the sanctions relief. And their big problem is that the United States is requiring them to stop all denuclearization, to be well on the way to denuclearizing to the point to which they no longer have a credible threat before they will remove any of the sanctions. That was what when John Bolton was there. That's the sort of thing they were saying, and they say we need some movement on that. We need something a bit better than that before we will come back to the table. And that's what all this talk is about. And they're just trying to get the United States to give a little bit on the sanction relief and to relieve some of the sanctions. And that's what also China and Russia want. And whereas South Korea and Japan, they're so closely allied with the United States, it's difficult for them to speak out about this. But I think they also are sympathetic with this idea that the United States should do something about the sanctions and do some goodwill gesture about sanctions and to get the thing moving rather than increasing sanctions, which is what the United States current approach is. So we just have to see what happens about all that, and these people are talking in the background, I'm sure, and the various other people trying to talk to North Korea, and we don't know what's going on in the background there, and we don't know what the United States is going to do. And then there's this whole impeachment thing which is preoccupying Trump as well. But there's absolutely no way that North Korea is going to attack anyone. The very worst case is they fire a missile up in the air, and it's supposed to just go up and then fall down into the sea. It's just got a little test. It's got a test weight in the nose, and that it accidentally goes off course. And even then, it would just be a very light, if not very light, but it wouldn't be explosive. It would just be a test missile, a test weight with lots of instruments so they get lots of data back about what their test missile is doing. And that is the most likely worst case, although I still think that a satellite is quite likely at this stage. Those are the three things people talk about. The third possibility is another nuclear bomb test. That is unlikely because they have already done enough nuclear tests to probably have done all they need to do. Some of our nuclear powers have done no more tests than North Korea did so far. So they probably demolished it as a goodwill gesture after they'd already done enough tests to know how to make nuclear bombs. Unless maybe for very advanced kind of things. So yeah, that's it. I hope that reassures you a bit. There's a Confucian country. He does care about his people. He is not going to, and here are all my videos as well. He's not going to. He's not suicidal. He's not insane. It does make sense from his point of view, even though it's rather an alien way of thinking for us, and it's very ruthless. But he is doing it for his country. He cares about his country, and that is the main thing that most people seem to miss in the West. They just sort of make him out like he's some kind of tin pot dictator. He isn't. He's the kind of hereditary family ruler of the country in the Confucian society, and North Korea is very important to him, and he is not going to do anything suicidal like that.